Alright, so clearly a lot has gone down in the monster community since I last made a video. I mean, it's been a crazy timeline of events as of recently, and I just have not had the time to catch up or make videos on any of these topics since it all happened. I explained what happened in a previous video of mine if you are curious about the personal events as well as what I've been working on, since I am not explaining it right here now. But I thought it would be a good idea to make a little compilation video of all these little events, if that makes sense. Just going over everything that I've missed out on and have not been able to talk since the last big video I made on Monster Hunter. So for reference, this video will be going over everything from Omega, 18 Nu Udra, 9-star monsters such as Ajarakan, Folger Anjanath, Blanganga, as well as more recent controversies involving stuff like the T-set in Wilds, Rudy DLC, and more, such as potential speculation on Gogmazios in the future title update. I'm not going to discuss what this video is about anymore because we've already got a lot of rambling ahead of us considering the amount of things to go through, and knowing future Monarch, he's going to have a lot to go through regardless, so let's be easy on him and get right into the talking points, starting with the good. Because, you know, I want to start off with the good, I want to start off with the positives, I'm a positive person, and oh my god, there have been a lot of goods recently in terms of Monster Hunter. Let's start off with the big one, that being Omega and title update 3 with his introduction into Monster Hunter Wilds. And I'm just gonna come out and say it right out of the gate, I think this is one of my favorite fights in the entire game, and if we are talking in terms of game mechanics and how effectively the monster or fight utilizes the game mechanics and systems inherent to the player, the systems in the fight itself, and what the monster can do, I think Omega Planetus has the potential arguments to be one of, if not the best monster in the game. I'm not going to say objectively speaking because ultimately whether you believe in that is a matter of personal preference and what you value, what you view as the title and right to be the best monster in the game, your qualifications for that, but from my perspective, with, again, mechanic utilization, the fight itself, how it all feels and flows, Omega Planetus is top-notch, and I don't just mean one or the other in terms of regular or savage, I mean Omega as a whole, because even if there is a lot of pain involved with this fight, especially in the savage, I think it still outweighs it in terms of just pure fun factor. Just everything about that fight tickles the little part of my brain that really appreciated elements of the Behemoth fight from Monster Hunter World. And if I'm gonna be honest, I think Omega is just better than Behemoth in every way. Not to say that Behemoth was bad per se, I think that there are some things that Behemoth did well on, and as a introduction to this type of battle in Monster Hunter in terms of utilizing elements from the home franchise it originates from, yeah, I think Behemoth is a good first attempt. But it's also one of those first attempts where you can see that they were really trying to do the best they can and were marching into uncharted territory. Because some things about it worked well, some things were novel ideas like the classic MMO team composition, which usually results in 2 DPS, 1 tank, 1 support, in MMO 4-party terms, and I think some of the ideas present in terms of the Charybdis, the Ecliptic Meteor, is neat, but the execution itself in the fight, considering Behemoth's size, his hitboxes, his attacks, his armor, so that left hitting him a little awkward, and then managing everything with the comments and Charybdis, it was fine-ish on the standard Behemoth, like you could get it down with a team with enough practice and it felt good, but then you considered something like Extreme Behemoth and it went way off the board. Whereas I'm happy to say I think Omega just does Behemoth so much better in terms of every single mechanic Behemoth had. We still have the 4-party comp of 2 DPS, 1 tank, 1 support, but I think that there are mechanics overall that encourage this team comp and strategy way more. Because with Behemoth, it was just the thing of, oh, you need to get Behemoth's ire in order to lay off the rest of the team and also, you know, divide up aggro, get the comments down, all of that. Like, it was pretty simple, all things considered, whereas Omega is way more complex of a fight and influences a lot more on these mechanics. Getting enmity on Omega isn't just about dividing up damage, it's making sure that other people get their damage opportunities, especially when Omega Planetus goes into Pantocrator mode, where he goes absolutely ballistic, and it can be incredibly difficult to hit him and get those wounds open if there is no enmity. The enmity also focuses all of Omega Planetus's group-wide attacks or area-wide attacks onto a single person, which, especially in the Savage with attacks like AMV Missile, is a godsend. It is a godsend having that focus on only one player, and if people are looking out for the tank essentially and saying, okay, if he's low on stamina or a bit low on health, I'm going to heal them just in case so they can survive tanking. Because from there, the DPSs can do their job in hitting the legs. Then you have new status ailments like HP penalty, which risks your tank tanking too long. Because if they don't avoid the initial blast, well, they can't tank as well, because they literally have less health to tank with, and this is a status effect that can stack up to 3 times. And it's one of those elements from Final Fantasy XIV, those raid mechanics, that incorporates itself very nicely into Monster Hunter and plays more into the team factor. Because now, it's no longer just a one person can tank. If someone has HP penalty, and especially 3 stacks of it, you need to make sure that they are safe or that Omega focuses on somebody else because they have a higher risk of dying. So you then hit Omega, or another player hits Omega's head to take the aggro off them, because HP penalty only wears off when there is no enmity. So if a tank continues having enmity, then it's not going to wear off until the enmity wears off, or it swaps over, or Omega goes into a phase of the fight, like a transition between areas, or begins doing Delta attack. I think that is a really cool incorporation and further usage of the team mechanics from Final Fantasy XIV into a Monster Hunter styled fight. I think the cooperation elements play even better with the usage of the Omega micros, little garbage mobs that Omega periodically spawns from time to time that can further endanger the lives of your tanks by sapping up all of their stamina and blocking, while they're also simultaneously trying to block Omega's attacks. And if they're allowed to swarm your tank, that's not good, and there is a very high likelihood that your tank, your party, is going to die soon because of the amount of micros that are swarming your tank. So then it becomes the duty of the DPS and the support to clear away the Omega micros as much as you can, especially when there is a glowing micro on the field that can produce a bubble shield. The bubble shields themselves are great incorporations of teamwork mechanics and further emphasize teamwork from Behemoth into this fight, because destroying an Omega micro that's glowing pops down this little bubble shield where everyone is safe inside of it. But the bubble shield can only take so much punishment before it breaks, so optimal placing and timing of bubble shields is crucial, because that way it can allow for optimal damage and getting those wounds in. They are especially good if a tank has enmity, so okay, you see a strategy forming. A tank can have enmity, or begins to get enmity from Omega, and optimally, you plop down a bubble shield close to that tank, so that way they are safe and can continue tanking while Omega's focus is provided on them, and the DPSs can continue attacking the legs. The same thing goes for when the legs eventually break, because those leg breaks are incredibly valuable. They drop shield generator slinger pods, 1 per use items that deploy a bubble shield just like the Omega Micros to wherever you throw it at. Which, okay, there are 4 legs, which means 4 shield generators per leg break, assuming you get all leg breaks. So then you can scatter those throughout the hunt whenever your tank gets aggro or needs to have that extra cover. Or alternatively, if you and your team just need that cover in general in order to get more damage. But that's only dependent on you getting the leg breaks, and the shield will eventually crack, especially if you use it to defend against a mustard bomb, in which case the shield will immediately break and the mustard bomb will be cancelled out. So it's this risk and reward management system of, do you use the bubble shield to negate the mustard bomb and the fire that it leaves behind, or do you lure away the mustard bomb to somewhere else to keep the shield up and running for your tank and the team, to keep them safe a little bit longer and continue attacking the legs? Because just like how Behemoth had Charybdis, Omega has mustard bomb. You need to lure that away, and it will do an insane amount of damage if it hits you, and plus leaves an active terrain trap in the form of fire that actively saps away your health extremely quickly. It cannot be blocked, it cannot be negated, you need to lure that away. So again, risk and reward management, deciding what is the best course of action for the hunt, what is best given the circumstances you are at, what is best for you and the team, and how much time you have afforded to you to make those decisions. Do you have enough time to run away and deploy the mustard bomb somewhere else, or do you use the bubble shield to get rid of the mustard bomb, but the mustard bomb will destroy the shield? It's so engaging, and then it's how it uses every other mechanic as well in the game. Leg wounds are vital in this fight. It's how you negate Pantocrator mode and stop Omega from going crazy. You need to make enough leg wounds both in regular as well as savage. In regular, if I recall correctly, it's about 3 leg wounds, whereas in savage it gets bumped up to about 4 leg wounds that you need to do. So it is vital that you attack the legs as much as possible, potentially have skills like Flare or weapons that can open up wounds easier. You need to be able to consistently hit the monster, and on Savage, wounds regenerate over time similar to construct monsters. So there's an extra factor of making those wounds as soon as possible and then utilizing that opening, because if you do not take advantage of that wound in Savage, it is going to regenerate. That means Omega Planetus is going to last in Pantocrator mode even longer. The chances of your team carding and team members dying goes up even higher. So you need to prioritize those legs. You need to attack them as frequently as possible and make sure to capitalize on the wounds whenever you can. There are some attacks Omega Planetus does that also leave temporary wounds that won't negate Pantocrator exactly, but will provide you and your team extra damage as well as opportunity windows for more damage and safety, especially after the Temper Tantrum attack or even any of the beam attacks from Omega's face, such as the Pew Pew lasers or even the Wave Cannon, which those face wounds specifically will also drop bubble shields. So okay, that's even more importance for getting those opportunity strikes down. That's even more importance for having proper positioning and timing with your teammates to get those temporary wounds, to make that bubble shield on the face, or even having a mount, because if you have someone that can mount the monster, you can make 1 wound on the back and 1 wound on the face, which will pop a bubble shield when that wound gets taken up. So even more strategy in terms of how to use your bubble shields, how to use them in your mechanics, how to use the wounds in general. There's effective hit zones and recommendations per weapon. Blade Masters and cutting damage is better for the back legs, while blunt and arrow/bullet damage is better for the front legs and head. So you want to necessitate and focus your party members around certain points of Omega's body, depending on what weapon types they have. Then there's also more minute mechanics besides wounding, like Sacrets. Sacrets are incredibly valuable in this fight because they allow for more movement and distance. If you can call your Sacred over when Omega is doing a Mustard Bomb, you can get that Mustard Bomb away farther than you would normally. If Omega is doing MRV Missile and it's targeting everyone, hop on your Sacred and run around the arena, making sure not to crisscross lines over your other party members until the attack is done. Sacreds can also provide mounting opportunities if you can do that, so that's even more good use and potential for Sacreds, along with factors like the Sacred Pickup if you can time and use it properly. Omega can be guard clashed and offset, which I'm gonna say I was not expecting Omega to be guard clashable, but it's really fucking funny, so that provides even more value to weapons that can guard or weapons that can offset. So consider bringing, again, a tank, a dedicated tank role to the team, or someone that can do both, because that will be even more damage opportunities for you and your entire team. Then there's the dreaded Delta attack ad phase, where you need to get rid of the clone Nursilla made for this crossover before Omega can fully charge up Delta attack. Omega is weak to thunder damage, but clone Nursilla is weak to fire damage for the most part, so that's further encouraging weapon swapping or have multiple elements / weapons in your back pocket, which is really neat because not many monsters, if at all, have outright encouraged weapon swapping or active planning in terms of weapons with wilds. I still occasionally swap weapons in the hunt. I'll still bring multiple weapons, of course, just in case, because, you know, I like playing around with the gimmick, but it's nice having this incorporation of the gimmick into the actual gameplay and strategy of the monster. I think that is incredibly good, cool game design, and reinforces that element of strategy. But there's also Morbles and Cactuars around the arena, which can provide you with much needed damage on the clone Nursilla, as well as uptime through status effects like the Morble. So okay, maybe then in that case it might be beneficial if one person on your team brings a paralysis weapon or something to help along with that, or even a weapon that can stun potentially and KO the monster, because then you can chain the Morbles, the Cactuars, the stuns, the paralyzes together one after the other in order to deal enough damage. And just like Omega, the clone Nursilla has an enmity of its own. So okay, that can make targeting and getting Nursilla down even faster, even better, if you can have the proper person to have enmity. And with enough practice, with enough strategy, yeah, the clone Nursilla will go down, and it feels really fucking good in spite of how hectic and sometimes close it is, especially on Savage. Like, do not get me wrong, this is a hard as balls DPS test, but it's a fair DPS test because you have all the tools at your disposal. You have to form a strategy with it, with you and your team. You have to use the Morbles and Cactuars effectively. You could even use the boulders, because remember, this is Jin Dahad's arena. So from 2nd, 3rd, and 4th arena onwards, or in all 3 of those, you have boulders to drop down on the monster, which can provide you even more damage because they are percent based on the monster's health. It's all so damn incredibly effective and helpful, and it just goes for the rest of the fight, even into the last phase, where it just ramps up and up in terms of the aggression, the moves, how fast it does it, needing to manage the mustard bombs, the bubble shields, the part breaks on the monster, using your Sacred to outrun the MRV missile, making sure everyone is playing their role, using the rocks. It's just... I'm not going to say it's a perfect fight, because obviously people will disagree with that, and I do not want to speak Objectively, again, that is up to your definition of what a perfect monster is, what the best monster in a game might be, your standards for that, all that and more. I do not want to speak for other people. But in my honest opinion, this is one of my favorite fights in the game, and what I'd consider up there as one of the best fights, just because of how it uses the game mechanics, how it uses Behemoth's mechanics, but so much better. It incorporates and encourages teamwork, strategy, planning, proper role usage, and just, it's so damn good. And everything from the attacks is dangerous. It's easily the hardest monster in the game at the moment, I'd say. Don't get me wrong, there can and will be moments where Omega will have you pinned down. It is insane the amount of pressure that this bastard, this little clanker, can do. Especially on a team or whole party. It may not feel like you can have an opening, and in some cases, some quests, you will not have openings if you do not do the mechanics properly. There have been times where I have just felt like I have not gotten a leg wound in a while, where I cannot consistently hit the monster. There's Omega Micros to handle, there's Rocket Fists coming my way, there's lasers shooting out in every direction, there's missiles falling on top of me, but I'm having to dodge all one on top of the other. But when you get the fight down, when you really master and memorize it, if you've got a good team going, if you know the mechanics and roles, and if you remember the golden rule at the end of a day, do not get greedy. Do not. Greed is the mind killer, especially in this fight, because of how many attacks it can layer on top of one another, or even just how fast the situation can turn around with Omega. Do not overcommit your attacks or strikes unless if you are free and able to. Because the amount of times I have died, or even me and my teammates have died because of greed, or thinking that just that little bit more of a push will clear, is insane, and that has often resulted in quest fails and deaths. But the satisfaction of beating this is incredible. As of the recording of this video, if I can recall correctly, I have about 14 Omega kills in my Hunter's Notebook, and I am still actively looking for and talking with people about helping them out with Omega or giving them advice, because I legitimately do like helping people out with a fight like this. It really brings back that cooperation vibe. And not to say that Monster Hunter Wilds or recent Monster Hunter has been missing that in general, because that is a entirely different discussion about, oh, if Monster Hunter Wilds has lost the spirit of Monster Hunter or whatever fucking else. I'm not getting into that right now. And I'm not going to entertain the argument. Monster Hunter Wilds is still Monster Hunter at the end of the day. It's just in a different form. It has not lost its identity or spirit, I'm just going to say. And, you know, there is still obviously cooperation, friendliness, and all of that in Monster Hunter Wilds, but it's nice having Omega Planetus, Regular, and Savage, who really encourages and fully utilizes it. And it's also a great step up from Behemoth and World, because you also have your AI hunters. You have the companion hunters who, in some cases, especially with Fabius, are just, I'm not going to say better than other players, because there are some very good players out there that I have seen and personally hunted with, but it's nice to have those options if you yourself do not have internet connection, or alternatively do not feel like hunting with other people online. It can take a little bit longer compared to what might be possible in a hunt with other people, but it's still very much possible. It's another option. And yeah, Omega is easily top 3 for me in terms of fights, and this is speaking as someone who is not really like a die-hard Final Fantasy franchise fan. Again, as I've said before, I have mostly only played 16, but I have picked up on knowledge of 14. I have been watching it and its contents for years, and even as someone who looks into 14 on the outset, I cannot believe how well they incorporated Omega and every facet of his fights from the Raid series and even more raid mechanics into Monster Hunter. It is incredibly well done, and I cannot imagine how it feels for people in the audience who like both Monster Hunter and Final Fantasy XIV. Like, that is an insane crossover of favorite franchises or elements. And as a whole, I'd say that this is the best crossover event Monster Hunter has done in the entire series. I'm a big deadass, and I think the gear that you get from both regular and Savage is very interesting. It's nice having even more unique mechanics and armor sets for this game, and personally I am very happy that it is not a repeat of the Draken armor situation, where in which the Bale armor or the Omega armor isn't just automatically the new best armor in the whole game, makes every other armor irrelevant, is just so good in terms of stats and armor skills that there's no point in using anything else. I'm glad it's not like that. Like, the Bale and Omega set, especially with mix set using, like, it's very good, and the Omega armor and weapons do provide unique set bonuses and skills and strategies to hunt if a player is using them, but it's not the end-all be-all, and I appreciate that. I find that a much better approach in terms of progression and adding in new things where it's just other options to use. I very much appreciate that. I'm not sure what else I could say about Omega that I haven't already said for like the past 20 minutes of the video. Like, we're already 30 minutes into recording and I have only been talking about Omega. I meant it when I said this was a ramble video. Fantastic fight, fantastic music using From the Heavens, Escape, and Heartless all in one. The clone Ursula is a very fun surprise. I was not expecting that going in, but it's very cool how it differs itself up from the regular Nucilla, how it's even more threatening. I like the DPS test mechanic, I like the wounding, I like Pantocrator, I like the armor, I basically like everything about this fight. It's a hard as balls fight, and I get why people may be frustrated about it, especially after multiple losses or trying Savage over and over again. Trust me, I get it, I've been there. I get why people would be mixed, especially if this isn't the kind of fight that they come to Monster Hunter for. But I think of it like this, like, if you don't like it, that's fine, but also, like, this is a one-off. This is a one-off crossover, and be glad for the people that do. Like, acknowledge, hey, it may not be for me, but that's fine. I'm happy for everyone else who like the crossover, who likes Omega as a monster, especially those who are fans of both franchises, or alternatively is a fan of Final Fantasy XIV coming to Monster Hunter, or vice versa. It's just, yeah. And I'm curious as well to see how some of the mechanics going forward here affects Monster Hunter Wilds, because Behemoth was the start of many mechanics that would influence future monsters like Safajiva, Kolv, all that more, through stuff like enmity, or nuke attacks, or needing to survive by hiding behind a specific something, or just doing mechanics in general. Behemoth affected a lot of that throughout Iceborne and even in Rise and Sunbreak, so I'm curious what Omega's influence on the games are gonna be like going forward, if we're gonna see any of that in Gogmazios or whatever else we see. Anyways, next up, because I've been rambling for too long, 18 Nu Udra. Very fun fight and extremely good upgrade over regular Nu Udra. And if I'm gonna be real, I think at this point it is safe for me to say that I prefer the Wilds ATs over the World ATs, World and Iceborne ATs. Because don't get me wrong, there were some good ATs in World and Iceborne. Fuck, I mean, Nergigante as one of my favorite monsters of all time for a while was strictly because of AT Nerg. Like, there are some very good ATs. But the problem with World and Iceborne's ATs is that it kind of took a bit too long to get there in terms of the really good stuff. Like, right off the bat, the first AT you got was Kirin, which is not a good impression upon players because that's Kirin. Then you had Valzak, which bumped up the effluvium mechanic even more. And then you had I think it was Teostra, Lunastra, and Kushala in that order, or maybe you can jumble it around a little bit. I have to... Future Monarch can recall the release dates or whoever was first or next, the order of which with those 3 monsters, but point is, it was those 3 monsters, and, you know, Teostra might have been a little better, but then Lunastra was still controversial as ever, and Kushala is fucking Kushala, especially World Kushala. So suffice to say, for 5 of the 8 AT monsters in World, it was not a great experience. It was not a good impression, and it overall added to the feeling of padding that a lot of people felt in World around that era. Now, eventually it did get good, funny enough, with Zora Magdaros of all things, because that AT was just a straight upgrade from the original in terms of actually having to do the fight and fight off Nergigante. Then you had Kulve and Nerg for base world, wrapping up the world ATs, and then Iceborne only did 2 in terms of Namiel and Velkhana, which those 2 were really good as well, but yeah, it took a while to get there, and even then a lot of the changes that the ATs offered up weren't really noticeable for the most part. Like, it took a bit for the changes to be noticeable or something worthwhile. Whereas with Wilds, every AT so far has just been a massive upgrade over the original and better in every way, and not to mention substantial in their upgrades. Raidao is the most normal of the ATs so far and is about what you'd expect in terms of just some more attacks and after effects, but I mean, Raidao is already a solid as hell monster, so I mean, that's a fair upgrade to have. But then you have Ufduna, who is possibly the best upgrade from base to AT we have ever seen. Holy shit, AT Ufduna was amazing in terms of more moveset variety, bigger threat level from the waves and pushing around she did, new patterns, new movement. It was just a really fun fight and upgrade for Ufduna. And then you have Nu Udra, the newest one, who just follows more along the lines of Ufduna in terms of like a bunch of new attacks, combo strings, patterns he can rope into one after the other, way more aggressive. He's got an active fire AoE around him, active heat aura that damages you, so you have to be more careful. He's got new attacks, especially the oil slick move, which is similar in effect to Omega's mustard bomb in that it leaves behind this massive fire field after it goes off that chips you down if you stay in it, and the attack itself is pretty difficult to block or needs max guarding skills to block, which even then I would not recommend blocking. And they overall just spice up the fight way more between him and his regular mode, where you're basically fighting him for most of the time in the mode, and he stays in that mode for a good portion of the fight, so you're really having to be on the best of your game. You're having to watch out for your health at all times, making sure it doesn't get too low in terms of health from the heat aura. You're having to watch with all the new slaps and combos and patterns he can do. You're having to watch out for the sign of the oil slick, because that will annihilate any player if they're too close to it. And yeah, it's a really good upgrade over Nu Udra, and Wild's ATs have been blowing it out of the park, and I'm extremely excited and curious what they are going to be doing for Jin Dahad come Title Update 4, and I am assuming Arkveld in Title Update 5. I really want to see what they're doing for Arkveld, especially considering what the end of game ATs have been like with Nergigante and Velkhana, how their fights are some of the best in the game and have brand new exclusive music to them. Now, I wouldn't even mind having Radiant Cry of Life playing for the AT Arkveld, because that is already one of my favorite tracks in the entire game, in the franchise arguably, and yeah, I just think it would be cool to see and what they would potentially do for those fights. And hey, AT Nu Udra armor is really good, it's extremely cool looking, offers even more mix set diversity, building options in terms of the Lord set bonus. It brought back a relatively niche group skill, I'm gonna say. People can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I don't think I ever saw talk or gameplay of how good Nu Udra's Bad Blood was prior to now. I think when Wilds came out, it was mostly a lot of talk about how broken Gore's mixed set bonus was, then also using Arkveld, Garden Arkveld, or all that. Like, I don't think I heard a lot of talk about Nu Udra set bonus, which is really good because of the ATs we're having a lot more of that talk. Like, all of the AT set bonuses have been brought back into relevancy in one way or another. I found a lot of personal use in AT Oof Duna set bonus. I just find it really comfy and safe to play with. And Nu Udra with the AT set bonus provides even more damage and uptime. Funny enough, the armor he gives you is a perfect fucking counter for him as an AT, so consider bringing that into your next AT Nu Udra hunt. And, you know, it brings very good skills like Burst onto the armor, which is always much appreciated. And yeah, I can't go as much detail into AT Nu Udra as I did Omega, purely because that is a new monster versus this is a refinement and upgrade of an already existing monster. I think I got all the points I wanted to across, but this was also arguably one of the most challenging ATs, or the most challenging one so far, even if that was admittedly purely because we were trying to do a Gunlance only challenge for the first clear, which ultimately we had to cancel that because it was taking way too long and people were suffering. It's like, alright, fine, you can use whatever weapon you want, and we got the first clear pretty quickly afterwards. Besides that, I'll say that the pendants for AT Nu Udra on the challenge quest fucking rock. They are amazing designs to look at, and it's proof that the designers are cooking in terms of the pendant designs. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Safe to say, I'm going to have a lot of fun in the future trying to rank these monsters in a tier list because of just these updates and VATs. And you know, speaking of refinements, I'm also going to talk a brief bit about the recent 9 stars that have been added to the game. I know some people may skip over them because, oh, they're not important, oh, they're temporary quests, why aren't they permanent? Which is fair. I do think that a lot of these 9 stars should be permanent going forward, just for more variety in the game. But regardless, I think it's still good to bring these up because this directly answers one of my previous videos in regards to the 9 stars, and one of the problems or statements I made in the video were which I agreed with people saying that, yeah, I would like to have other monsters in the future be ramped up in terms of star rating, or also be granted the 9-star privilege. And suffice to say, I am happy that so far we've been rolling out with them and the developers have been agreeing with the idea, because so far we have had Blangonga, Fulgur Anjanath, and Ajarkon most recently added to the pool of 9-star monsters through event quests, and they have all been very fun in one way or another. Again, not the most complicated in terms of patterns and moveset variety. Like, it's not really doing a lot in terms of 9-star with updating those elements. It's mostly just a lot of damage upgrades and health upgrades, making them last longer, be more threatening with many of their attacks, which, I mean, again, some people are going to be sticklers about that and be like, no, I want more moves and new patterns and all that. It's lazy doing number increases and all of that. Which is, again, funny, because I mentioned the same exact thing in the 9-star monster video, and again, insert that one meme picture of Mario with the guns, where it's like, some people just can't really decide what it is they want. It's like, okay, you're saying it's lazy to have a stat increase? Well, it's like, how do you want it then? Do you want it to be new moves and patterns? Because then there will also be some people, or like the same people, arguing about like, oh no, the new patterns or moves are bullshit, so it's like, what the fuck do you want? And again, there's nothing wrong with using a stat increase inherently. It depends all on usage. And I'm gonna say it's fine. It's fine here. I have no problem with it whatsoever. I think given the monsters that, yeah, a damage and health increase is what was needed most, and it allows us to enjoy these earlier mid-game monsters even more. Now, would I appreciate there being more variety in the moveset, or like more differences as 9 stars? Yeah, absolutely. I would also like for just other monsters even more to be added into the 9-star catalog, or to even bring back some of the earlier monsters, because we've mostly been seeing mid-game as of recently in terms of Blanganga, Fulgur, and Ajarikon. We haven't really gotten anything around the lower tiers like Lullabarina, Chotacabra, Balahara, all of that. Which I guess we'll see. But, yeah. Again, the 9 stars are solid. I like what they're doing. We have news of 9-star Rathalos coming up in the future, which from what I hear has talks of being permanent or has a chance of appearing in the environment. So okay, they're gonna hopefully add that into the other 9 stars like Blanganga, Fulgur Anjanath, and Ajarikon, where in which their 9 stars can also appear in the field. I think that would be a good addition if that was just made permanent with all the other 9 stars. I'm curious what Rathalos is going to be like, because yeah, Rathalos is very fun in this game, and yeah, I think out of all of them, Ajarikon has definitely had the most pattern difference, where from what I've seen, he, for one, has a bigger radius on a lot of his explosion attacks, especially in terms of the Grand Cannonball. The Power Wave, or like Slam, now shoots out a wave of explosions in front of him, so it is very unsafe to block all that, and I'm pretty sure that was not around in the original version of Ajarikon. He also has a new combo structure where he does this running arm charge twice in a row, and then connects it into an overhead slam. Which, hey, that's nice. That's some pretty good mix-ups and combos for Ajarikon, and I think it does enough that monsters needs in terms of like, yeah, Ajarikon has already some pretty good moves and mix-ups and combo potential. He's got dangerous attacks. He just needed a bit more damage and maybe like 1 or 2 other options in terms of variety, and well, they gave it to him here. So I'm happy about that. Overall, yeah, again, I'm still having fun with the 9 stars. I'm taking them at my own pace. I'm doing them when I feel like it. I'm breaking things up, doing variety. And I think what they're doing right now is good enough for the current standards of the game. Again, could things be better? Yeah, arguably. And I can definitely see arguments that the whole of the game should be important in terms of the roster, that, you know, every monster be relevant, which we'll see. Considering the direction of Wilds as a game and how endgames like that usually come in at the expansion, I feel like that's going to be an expansion-only thing. If the roster is going to be relevant, if they're going to plan something for the expansion's endgame, it's going to be then. It's not going to be right now in Wilds, and I feel like a lot of the endgame in terms of Wilds as a whole is just kind of, I don't say this as a bad thing, but you can tell it's very much just kind of there to placate hunters, give them something to do throughout the title updates as they're working out ideas for the expansions, endgame, and whatever we're going to do there. Plus, like I've mentioned before and brought up the point, there's a lot of points you can make about previous endgames in general and their shortcomings. I'm not getting into that again, but like, every endgame has had their problems, every endgame has had their optimization problems in terms of what is most effective, what is most beneficial, the repetition of it, how many monsters you are allowed to hunt, all that and more. Like, every endgame has had their problems, and that's not in defense of Wilds, do not get me wrong, do not mix up what I'm saying here. It is not in defense of Wilds. If you have a problem with Wilds endgame, that is perfectly fine. I'm just saying, it is worth pointing out the pattern here with other endgames, and that this is nothing new, and that criticism should also apply to those endgames. Besides all that, the one other good point I can say as of recently in terms of development is not related to Wilds, but instead to Monster Hunter Stories Free, which looks really good. I'm not sure what I can say about it if it hasn't already been said by this point. I have not covered Stories Free yet on the channel, so my apologies. I've been, again, running behind on that, as well as preoccupied with other things I need to do, but everything about Stories Free is looking good. I like the more mature and adult approach when it comes to the character design, the setting, the story, the Civil War approach from the sounds of it. I like the updates in terms of the graphics and the art style in general. Like, it's still good old Stories art style, which is gorgeous, but it's very funny looking at how Stories Free looks, which is absolutely amazing, then comparing that to Stories 2 and especially Stories 1. Like, the evolution of the art style, and especially the player models and NPCs, is fucking hilarious, but I dig it. I am very much a fan of the Rise monsters, and even some Wilds, being introduced into the game. And I think for the game's art style, it looks really good, especially Magna Malo. I don't know why, like, I'm not gonna rag on Magna Malo or divert from the topic, but I just think that with the Stories Free art style, this is the best he's ever looked. I'm not gonna lie. For at least regular Magna Malo. Scorned is a different story, but I just think Stories Free does a really good job of portraying Magna Malo's design, his features, the Hellfire Wisps, in a really good fashion. The art style does a lot for him, and even, I'd say, smooths out a lot of the problems some people may have had with Magna Malo's design from the series in terms of the weapons, how cluttered his design can be. And I think it fits a lot more, or like, looks really good given the style. I like how Roknekadaki looks, I like how Chotacabra looks, I like Actisom, and all the other monsters we've seen teases of. There's fucking Plesioth and Green Plesioth in the game, oh my god. There's rumors of element swapping being featured in the game, or making a return, especially when it comes to the visual design changes that it had in Stories 1, because that was one of the biggest critiques of Stories 2, in that there was no design changes for element swapping, which bummed out a lot of people. Seems like they're bringing that back for this game, which hallelujah if they do. That's going to be really fun to play around with. I think the new monsters are introducing in this game from Rise, arguably Sunbreak, because there have been talks of people seeing stuff like Garangolm in the trailers. There may be stuff like Lunagaron, Malzeno, if you take a look at the eggs. All that and more. And I mean, we even have a bit of Wilds representation with the first confirmed monster being Raydao and Chotacabra. We may see some more, but if I'm gonna be real, I think it's mostly gonna be Wild monsters that were confirmed or made early on development. I don't think we're gonna see a lot of Wild monsters. If at most, more might be DLC. But in terms of base game, we're probably gonna be seeing, if I have to take a guess, besides Chotacabra and Raydao, probably Arkveld and Deshagama. I feel like those monsters were early on in development enough that they could have made it into Stories Free, but we'll see how things go. And again, I think a lot of the mechanical changes, the graphical changes they're doing, the focus on pot shots in the open world using monster abilities, the importance of that, the increase in importance is very nice. There seems to be some element of cooking or bonding with your teammates according to recent updates, which I think is very nice. And most importantly, we're seeing a surprising return in terms of fucking Yamasukami as a confirmed monster, probably a boss in the game, but still, it may not be main series Monster Hunter, but it's still absolutely ridiculous that we're getting Yamasukami over 10 years after his last appearance, which was fucking Freedom Unite in terms of the main series. Like, that is a good 15 plus, maybe even 20 years ago. It's honestly ridiculous. Future Monarch or Editing Monarch will pull up a screenshot of Freedom Unite's release dates, but yeah, and I'm really excited with how he looks in the game, what that means in terms of him coming back in the franchise as those other monsters that have not made the light of day in a while, and I'm curious what the story is going to be like, what it's going to be in terms of the revelations, the Civil War element, the idea of the main character's mother still being alive, or this enigmatic figure that may now be against them. There's a Skyscale Rathalos twins, with one being yours, the other being in the hands of the enemy. Then there's the mystery of the Crystal Encroachment, which I'm going to assume is related to the story and final boss of whatever this game is going to be, similar to how in the first game it was the Black Blight with Mikili, and then the Rage Rays with Altura. And considering those monsters, their designs, especially Altura, I cannot fucking wait for what the unique final boss of this game looks like. It might be ridiculous. I don't know what to think of in terms of concept or ideas. That about covers it in terms of what I wanted to say in terms of the positives and Stories Free as a whole. There could be more I want to talk about, but right now, I basically said everything I could about Stories Free in a positive note. So, what better bridge than this very game into the negatives? Because, funny enough, the first thing I'm going to be talking about is related to Stories Free, and if you've paid attention to the community and what controversies have passed by as of recently, you know that people are not happy with how the game is handling its DLC, and especially the various editions of Stories Free. And now, usually, like, when you take a look at the editions of a game, it's typically what you'd expect, like some extra costumes, some skins you can have for your writer based off the Stories 1 character, Stories 2, as well as Rise. You get a costume for your partner, as well as different hairstyles, which further tease and signify potential monsters that may be making an appearance in Stories Free, whether as just monsters or as monsties as well. And you know, that's all fair and typical business. Then you see the side story Rudy at the bottom there, included in the deluxe edition, and just why? It leaves such a sour note in my mouth and everyone's mouths, because just why? Why is this a thing? I don't see a reason why this is a thing, outside of them needing to fill a quota from upper management in terms of, okay, this isn't enough incentive to buy the more expensive deluxe edition. We need to add one more thing. Hey, team, you can add in a side story based on that little new Palico companion you have in the game. It smells of corporate greed and meddling from the higher-ups, unfortunately, which that's always fun to see. And again, it sucks because it puts such a sour taste in everyone's mouths, because nobody was expecting Stories Free and the announcements of it. Nobody was. Like, nobody expected Stories 2. Nobody expected Stories 2 to do as well as it did and do better than the first game. And everyone was happy that this little spin-off series was continuing even into the Switch 2 era. Like, I'm pretty sure most people were locked on and confirmed in terms of buying the game and their support for it the moment it was announced, because these are very underrated games, I'm gonna be real. It sucks. It sucks having this kind of corporate meddling because it sours the overall product. Like, there's all this effort going in from the developers, there's this gorgeous art style, there's this return of a beloved but underrated spin-off series, RPG mechanics, even more fine tune-ups, new weapons being included like the lawn sword, new monsties, return of potentially element swapping and design changes, and it's like, that's all good. Why does there need to be DLC included in the deluxe edition of a Rudy side story? And we all know and can say that this is probably cut out from the base game because it's going to be public later down the line anyways. It's slated for a public release in autumn of 2026, which means the deluxe edition is basically just like early access. It's like a season pass early access a few months before the side story becomes available for everyone. Now, we don't know how big this Rudy side story can be. We don't know the importance of it. We don't know how much it's adding to the overall game. And even then, I could be wrong in terms of the cut from the base game assumption, because that's just how development is. That's how leaking is. You never know for sure. It is a very complicated process in terms of development, assets, and the creation dates of development of all that and more. Content creators like Meatman have made videos about this exact topic in terms of the leaks of Monster Hunter Wilds and the story behind that, the interesting little facets of development, and what the developers did, how they salvaged certain elements of the DLC and title updates. Like, you can look at that for more information of what I'm talking about, but it's like, point is, we never know, so for all I know, this could have been something that they had been working on and weren't able to include in the game because of time constraints, so maybe, I don't know. It's weird. Like, it's even weird for me to make that argument because it's like, wait a minute, it doesn't make sense because it's still releasing the same day as the game, just in the deluxe edition. I don't know. That's just how weird and out of nowhere this whole situation is in terms of the side story being announced as packaged DLC for the deluxe edition. To make matters worse, recent posts have gone up on Monster Hunter's official accounts saying that side stories do have an effect in terms of your relationship to the teammates and will provide benefits in terms of hunts and all of that, and that there will even be points in the story, according to screenshots, in which you need to do a certain character's side story to progress further, like what I'm showing right here. So it's like, they're clearly showing that side stories have a benefit to party gameplay and will give you rewards for doing it, so then why cut out one of them? Does that beg the question of if Rudy is going to have an effect on the game? Is it going to provide benefits of its own? Is it going to be the best benefits out of all the party members you could have? Is there some effect that's going to be had? We have no fucking clue. There's nothing to be said about this. We don't know what content the Rudy DLC, the side story, is having. We don't know what effect it's going to have on the game as a whole, how long the side story is going to be. Best case scenario, it doesn't have an effect on party gameplay and unique rewards. If it does offer unique rewards, at most it's going to be just little bonuses and side stuff that isn't necessary. But again, this depends on how Rudy is factored into the game, what role he's serving, if he can actually benefit the team, and what benefits those are, how good they are. Because for stuff like Eleanor, for example, or like the other hunters here, I assume that they are like the companions you can have in stories too, so that kind of makes sense with why they have benefits from doing their side stories, or why you need to do them to continue the story. It's not a great thing to see for an otherwise beloved game and hyped game that many people are looking forward to, and yeah, I'm with other people in saying that I am only getting the standard edition. I am only getting the standard edition of Monster Hunter Stories free. I'm going to be aiming for a physical copy because physical for life, I prefer having physical copies in terms of preservation and just seeing that I have the game, that I own it on my shelf, but I will not be getting the deluxe edition or the last one, the Ultimate Edition or whatever it's called. I will not be getting that because I do not want to send the message to Capcom or the higher-ups that this is okay. I will still buy the game and enjoy it, and at the end of the day, I will still vouch for and support the devs themselves and the effort put into this product, because again, this is the kind of moral grayness of video games in situations like this, where you play or buy the game to support the devs, not exactly the corporation behind it. How far is too far? What is the moral boundary you have when it comes to certain issues or topics in gaming? All that and more. It sucks because I would have been happy to fork over the extra $10 or so on the deluxe edition if there wasn't this DLC here. I would have been fine to support the devs and give them even more money if it meant supporting their endeavors and allowing them to do more content like Stories free, the DLC, and whatever else they have in the future. But unfortunately, I just kind of can't with the side story being included like this. Which is also funny that I'm talking about DLC and paid monetization and all that, considering the other big thing that happened in the community as of recently. And we're going back to Monster Hunter Wilds with this. It's no surprise that there's been a lot of controversy or talk around the monetization of Monster Hunter Wilds. The amount of DLC and cosmetics that are being made for the game, making people feel like that their focus is in the wrong place, that, hey, where's all the attention and focus on the performance, most importantly, as well as other issues or critique involving the game. And it's hard to say for me, because as a whole, like I said, with the stories free DLC and the side stories we just talked about, I do not have an issue directly with supporting the devs through a little bit more money. I do not have an issue itself with the idea of DLC or other cosmetics. Ultimately, the thing about like what it's been for the past few years is that it's just been cosmetics. That's fine. It's been cosmetics. Arguably, there doesn't need to be this many cosmetics because it's kind of ridiculous how much these cosmetics are worth altogether if you add them up. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it is up to the person and their moral standing on how they feel about this, how they feel using their money for something like this. And if someone wants to use money to buy it, that is ultimately their decision. I can grandstand all I want and say that it's a bad idea, you shouldn't support this, but ultimately, if someone wants to buy a little bit of cosmetic DLC, that is their decision to make, and I'm not going to grandstand or tell them what to think, what to say, what to do, or what is good for their wallet, provided that they are, of course, reasonable, and they have good sensibilities, or like, again, so long as it doesn't come to harm with the person themselves or anybody else. That's where I draw the line usually when it comes to monetization, as well as other factors, which I'm not getting into. But yeah, ultimately that's how I stand on monetization or like cosmetics at the end of the day. And I mean, fuck, I have friends who have paid DLC. Not just for Monster Hunter Wilds, but for World, Iceborne, Rise, Sunbreak. Like, I'm not gonna judge them for it. That's ultimately their decision, and that's all perfectly fine, because I get it. I'm not exactly saintly in this aspect either, because if you've looked at the footage as of recently, or if you've paid attention to some of my hunts, you'll notice that, hey, wait a minute, I have a DLC costume on my Sacred. That is the Pure Horn Comparison DLC costume. That is about $5 or so on my Sacreds. Because yeah, I have paid money for this game. I have bought DLC. I did buy that costume, and knowing me, I may buy some more things in the future. Now, does that negate what I'm saying? Maybe, arguably so. Again, that depends on your moral viewpoint or standard or what you think of me as a person. Ultimately, what this often comes down to for some people, besides their mental standing, is like how they feel about supporting the devs. Some people may consider this as supporting the devs and encouraging their hard work. Alternatively, it's just them wanting to treat themselves a little bit, get a bit more fashion and all that, and that's totally fine. So, I'm not exactly against the idea of cosmetics and DLC in Monster Hunter. Could some prices be lowered? Could there be not as much DLC as there is right now for Wilds? Absolutely. And I think there is a fair point to make here where it's like, this should not be the focus. It's fine if you want to make a few bits of DLC, but this much to a point where it adds up to hundreds of dollars while people are still talking about performance issues among other things? Yeah, like there should be less in terms of that regard. And in terms of the tea time gesture, this is where I'm going to have to draw the line. Okay, can't believe I'm making a post edit like this. Hi, hello, it's me, Future Monarch, post editing Monarch, whatever you want to call me. Look, it is 6:28 in the morning right now as I'm editing this, and I am just now realizing that I made a pretty big mistake in terms of the tea time gesture section, in that I am talking about the wrong fucking gesture. I am talking about the wrong thing. The actual thing I meant to say, and that I am referring to this whole time, is the Camp Gear Set Volume 3, which actually retails for about $4 American. So, anytime I say the T-set gesture going forward, replace that with the Camp Gear Set, okay? Thank you. I have been editing this for way longer than necessary because I thought, oh, I'll just trim it down, make it an even quicker video, and sure, I've cut down about like 30 minutes from the recording, but at what fucking cost? And now having to find all these screenshots and photos to actually reference what I'm talking about, and then having to grab and figure out, okay, why can I not find the screenshots talking about what I'm going to be talking about, and huge shout out to Oceanus for taking the hit for all of us in buying this gesture and showing some of these screenshots online. Thank you. Huge thank you, because I'm going to be using some of these screenshots and link to his post as well as his Reddit post down in the description below, which gives even more details on this DLC. Anyways, back to the video. Because it's not exactly directly affecting gameplay, it's not affecting your hunts, your weapons, or monsters. Because again, the moment that it affects your weapons, the moment that they lock a weapon and armor set with stats and all that behind cosmetic DLC, the moment they lock a monster outside of just an expansion, that is the point where it's like, we've gone too far. That is the fine line for me. So it's interesting seeing the controversy around the tea time set, because it's just kind of another gesture. It's another one of those gestures that they've made hundreds of already. The difference with the tea time gesture, though, and why it kind of rattles me a little bit, is because it doesn't have a direct effect on gameplay, but it does add more to it. Because this gesture provides extra DLC lines and voice lines about the world, the setting, characters in the game. And that feels extremely gross to me, on the same line as the Rudy side story controversy. And it feels gross especially because I was praising Wilds for doing the exact opposite. I have been a fan of Wilds and its story for actually providing a story to Monster Hunter, for doing more for the lore than any other game up till this point. For the first time in Wilds, we actually got confirmation of the ancient civilization, or the equivalent of it, with Wyveria. We have Wyverian descendants through this village of Sild, and people like Nada and Tashin. We have confirmation of artificial monsters through construct monsters, the Guardians, Zoshia. We have confirmation of there being a war or some kind of conflict that these monsters were made for. We have confirmation of the equal fucking dragon weapon through Zoshia as an adaptation of that idea. Wilds has done the most out of any of the games to progress the lore and worldview, and then also at the same time provide character moments and development through characters like Nada in the main story, as well as other bits and details through village ecology, the lives of these people, how that ties into the environment. We get details on fucking Eric in Title Update 2 and why he is a handler, why he joined up with the guild. We get extra character when he's talking about Legaicris and his love for nature. Like, this is real dedication right here. We're getting so much story and lore and character details through this game, through these interactions, through the title updates, and to see all that hard work and effort, to see all these details lovingly put and crafted into the game, and have that fucking shat on by paid DLC? It's disgusting, I'm not gonna lie. Cause like, why would you do this? Why would you lock such cool, important character development, lore development, setting development, village development into a fucking gesture? Like, some of these revelations, some of these things that they talk about in the gesture is really fucking cool. And I'm showing you the screenshots right now, or at least like Future Monarch is showing the screenshots and some of the developments that happen in the tea time gesture, what are talked about. It's like, this is super fucking cool. Why isn't this in the game? And I know some people are gonna come out with a bullshit excuse of, oh, it's just story, it's just extra details and lore, it doesn't matter. The fuck you mean? The fuck you mean it doesn't matter? Story and lore always matters, especially when it's a role-playing game like this. You cannot care for the story of Monster Hunter, for the lore. That's fine. You cannot like the direction Monster Hunter is going with or how they handled the story in Monster Hunter Wilds. Yes, because it does have problems in terms of direction. There could have been some things that were handled better. I am going to talk about this in a future video. But you cannot say to my face that it doesn't fucking matter when there are videos out there, when there are channels out there dedicated to unraveling and talking about the lore, the ecology, the character, and the story of Monster Hunter. Oh! Like, sorry, I did not mean to get that aggressive and violent, but like, that really fucking pisses me off. I'm not gonna lie. When people pull out that bullshit argument of it not mattering in the slightest, because it happens all the fucking time, not just in Monster Hunter, but in other games. You hear the same shit for like, when people are criticizing Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter for their stories, or like fighting game stories in general. It's like, why are you caring this much about it? It doesn't matter. Yes, it fucking does, especially when the game includes a whole ass story mode. Again, you can have your preferences in terms of not liking the story or caring for it, but don't fucking say to my face that it never mattered, that it's not important, when not only are there fan content and people talking about this, sharing it, and making speculation on it, but when also the developers care for it, when they actively introduce and feature more lore, characters, and story into this game, when one of the biggest fucking selling points for Wild was the more intricate story and the revelations on the franchise's lore. Ugh. It sucks. It sucks and stings, having that same old tire argument over and over again, ad nauseum, and knowing my stance where it's like, old-time people will know, personally, that I value story a lot. One of my biggest series on YouTube was about one of my favorite franchises of all time, and talking about its story, its lore, its characters. That's how I got a huge portion of my audience. You think I'm known for Monster? Like, back in the day, like when I was still making that, that's how I got a surge of popularity around the internet. That's what people knew me as. I popped up in articles talking about fighting game stories, not to fucking brag and pride myself over, because those are old as hell videos, but like, the point being, this stuff matters. It matters to me, because of how much I care for the story in franchises like this. And again, I love and like the story of Monster Hunter Wilds. I like the lore. I like the revelations. And importantly, I want to see them continuing to experiment with the story. I do not want them to stop exploring the lore of Monster Hunter purely because of the criticism and controversies around the story. Saving grace, I guess, is that it's $2. Like, it's very cheap. It's not worth a lot, so I guess that's something. And again, ultimately, if you want to buy it, all the more power to you. That's your choice. That is your money. But for me personally, this is a hard pass. And it hurts. Especially when I can just fucking look it up on the internet, which that confuses me. I don't know why they'd lock it behind DLC outside of corporate meddling if people can just upload screenshots on the internet. Like I think back to stories of, like, what was it, Masahiro Sakurai being put off from doing stories in another Smash Bros. Game because all the clips and cutscenes were uploaded to YouTube. Like, I don't know, I feel like that's just a thing that's gonna happen. I don't see why locking into DLC would circumvent that issue or make it any better. It just kind of makes it more humiliating, honestly. That's all I'm gonna say about this. God, this saddens me, and I am not gonna support this gesture specifically, and I really hope they do not do any more of this, because they have been doing so good in terms of incorporating more story, more character, more lore into these games. And the last thing I want from both Stories Free and the main series is them doing even more of these DLCs, which lock story contents and DLC behind them. And again, I know there's the argument where it's like, oh, it's not all that different from paying for a book or piece of merchandise that does have concept art and lore, whether scrapped or official, in the book, because I have seen that argument pop up from time to time, and I just think that's two completely different things. Like, that's a book you are paying for, which is like $30 to $40 to pay on content, which is also, you're getting concept art, you're getting developer interviews, you're getting a look at the world, environments, how they develop the game, alongside the lore, or like any other details in there. There are books also made for ecology and like other lore details. Like, I don't know. I think it's a complete different standard having a book dedicated to that, or like a concept art book with some of it in there, versus a $2 gesture. Like, I don't know. I think it's just two completely different things, and comparing apples to oranges. Regardless, that's enough about this issue. That's about it from me in terms of overall negatives on this video. There is one more thing I want to talk about, but this doesn't exactly fit into either the strictly good or strictly bad category. I guess we can call this section mixed, neutral, we'll just have to see. And that's all the news surrounding Gogmazios and Title Update 4, who is going to be happening very soon, on the 15th/16th. There'll probably be a trailer at the Game Awards about Gogmazios, showing him off in more detail, maybe even teasing Title Update 5 and what that monster and content will be. And I think for me personally, like, nothing has changed in terms of how I feel about Gogmazios. Like, I am very excited to see what his fight is like, what the mechanics will be, the arena. I'm curious to see, again, how Omega may influence some of his mechanics, and we're already seeing news of that in terms of there being some emphasis, once again, on having multiple weapons or multiple elements on hand to take care of the monster. So it's being encouraged right now to bring both a fire and a dragon weapon to deal with the different states. So I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that bit of strategy and idea still in the fights. I hope they keep this going forward for a lot of big boy hunts or whatever they have in the future. I'm excited for, again, his mechanics, his moveset, how he's gonna look in the game, what his fight is gonna be like. Like, I am totally ready to add yet another peak monster to the list in terms of Monster Wilds and that eventual tier list, or even a great monster. Like, whatever Gogmazios ends up being, I'm pretty sure he's going to be a really fun fight. I'm curious about armor and all that, and weapons. You know, that all hasn't changed, but there has been some other news in terms of the title update and what it will bring that has some people mixed, particularly in terms of preparation towards Gogmazios and what Gogmazios is going to reward. So first off, armor spheres are going to be easier to grind for as well as smelt for in the game. That is strictly a good thing, I feel. Because yes, I think a lot of people's critiques have been pretty valid in terms of especially heavy armor spheres and just how rare they are, how much you need to smelt and make armor spheres where you really need a large stockpile. So I think it is strictly a good thing, lowering the requirements. They have made it easier to grind certain things by making specific event quests permanently available. That is very good. There is talk and reports about how there will be a limit break system introduced for armors, allowing you to upgrade their defense even higher, and more importantly, expand the slots on lower rarity armors and gear you might have. And this is another good thing, I will say, because this is going to open up the floodgates to a lot of mid-game armors or gear that has been left in the dust, like Guardian Fulgur, Guardian Ebony. Hell, maybe even we might see some Blanganga with Warcry come into play in the following title update, because all of that gear will now be up to snuff with the current gear, or will be higher than what it was before. It will have better armor slots, it will have better defense. I think that is all good, like allowing more options for mix setting, more options for players, allowing greater diversity. I cannot wait to see what kind of builds people will make and what I will personally experiment with. Oh, sorry, it's called transcending, not limit breaking. My apologies. So like, yeah, that's all good. The interesting part, and the one I'm more mixed on, is the news concerning Title Update 4 and how they're also going to be continuing Arshian weapons. Now, Arshian weapons are another controversial element of Wild's endgame grind and the content on display. Lots of people have voiced their critiques in terms of how much they hate the Arshian grind, how repetitive it is, and how it negates other options, how they're the best options in the game. I have not gone into it myself because I have not felt like it. It's like that is something I am not touching with a 10-foot pole. Ultimately, I do kind of agree because, I mean, I said the Draken armor sentiment earlier in the video with Omega, but I'm glad Omega's armor isn't the default best, that's not Draken armor. So I should have a problem with Arshian weapons because, again, a lot of people say that they're the best anyways. There's no point going for anything else. And that's kind of fair, but also, I just... This is very much a me and personal me thing, where I just don't feel the complaint as much because I don't really fucking care for Arshian weapons. I'm gonna be 100% real, I do not give a shit. I have some made, yes, as options, as other weapon options, in case if I need an element for a weapon, or whatever else, but I don't exclusively use Arshians. I think it's fucking boring using exclusively Arshians. Like, why would you do that to yourself? And I think also that there have been some weapons and armors as of recently that have kind of offset that. Like Lagiacrus being the go-to weapon for Omega, for example, where it's like, sure, Arshian weapons are still good, but Lagiacrus has a lot of value because of the skills on it and how that ties into the Lagiacrus armor and going against Omega or even other lightning weak monsters. And this is also just very much a me thing in that, like, I have never really cared for meta. I am not a meta follower. Like, I will peek in terms of knowledge and what people are saying. I will try to listen and understand the critiques of meta or, like, balancing and all that. But ultimately, I just kind of go with the flow of whatever I want and feel like. Which isn't Arshian all the time. I use whatever the hell I feel like because I'm in it for my own fun. Which, that gets then into the argument of what fun even is, how it differs between people, yada yada yada. which is its own topic that I'm not going to get into. Again, a previous video already covered that a little bit more. I could cover this more in the future. Point is, like, it doesn't really affect me as a person because I never really bought into Arshins anyway. I'm not going to obsess over perfect rolls and stats or if it wasn't optimal on a weapon. Now, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a single remote fuck about Arshin weapons or what's optimal of a grind. I just want to use what I want to use. I really don't give a shit, and I have been perfectly fine not using Arshin. I get why it might be a problem for people in terms of the Arshin grind, its repetitiveness, and also if they are more so in the challenge running and speed running communities. I get that. I'm just not that person. Now again, could things be better? Yes, absolutely. Do I think everything about Arshins is perfect? Fuck no. And personally, yeah, I would have preferred if they had some other kind of endgame, or much less if Arshins weren't accessible so early on in higher rank. Because it allows for easier access to the endgame, but also encourages, like, the mindset I've seen so many people have or fall into of, why should I get any other weapon when I can get Arshian weapons this early and they're just better than everything else? They may not have a set skill, but they have impressive deco slots and I can make an element or ailment for any kind of Arshian weapon. Which then makes it a little conflicting or interesting considering Title Update 4 and what's been said, where in which Arshian weapons are going to get yet another buff. We are going to be getting materials from Gogmazios, which will allow us to create Gogma Arshian weapons, which will be stronger, and more importantly, they will have the ability to have one set bonus skill and one group skill chosen at random, in addition to reinforcement bonuses being even stronger than the standard Arshian weapons. So, now we're throwing a little bit of Kolv and Safi into the mix in terms of how their weapons worked, how Kolv and Safi had randomized weapons, and Safi in particular had weapons that could be augmented through rolls in terms of stuff like sharpness, element, damage, status, all that and more, and then also you could slot in a random monster set skill, like Baryoth Punish Draw, or Agitator bonus, and all that and more. And I'm not sure how to feel about this in particular, which again is why I said it was funny that I don't really care for Arshins, but I'm mixed on this, because it is a valid critique and concern being like, okay, Arshian weapons are pretty strong, as is. What the hell is the meta gonna look like? What the hell is the game gonna look like when the Arshian weapons next update roll out? Is that going to invalidate every other weapon that has come prior? Maybe, maybe not. It's a little concerning, because I mean, I just talked about like how other weapons have caught up or stayed relevant because usually other set bonuses are unique properties, but then we're going to be getting that with Arshian weapons, which, if it can apply stuff like Legiacris, Mizusine, Seregios, that'll be fucking crazy if it could apply Omega set bonus, whatever set bonus Gog is going to have. Arkfeld, Garn Arkfeld, Garn Fulgur, Garden Ebony, Doshagma even, the 4 Apexes. Fuck, if it allows for even a Lord Soul on it from the ATs, then that might be a concern for me. That might be where it tips over for me. Ultimately, I think my thoughts are just like, it's going to have to depend on how it executes in the game itself. I'm going to have to see how things are in the game. I'm going to have to ask friends, especially a certain friend, in terms of what they find in terms of damage numbers, internal stats, because they're the one that's way more passionate about this than I am, even though they do not follow meta. They just find it interesting looking at numbers. And again, it depends on like what are the limits here in terms of the system. What sets and skills can it roll for? What can it not? How good is it going to be? And how much is it going to power creep the other weapons? And then how is that going to affect the future of the game going forward? with Title Update 5 and then into the expansion. We're just gonna have to see. It's concerning, but it's one of those ideas and statements that, like, we can't make a lot of inferences on because we don't know the specifics. I'm still gonna do whatever the hell I want. I'm not gonna limit myself to just Arshian or Gogma Arshian weapons, regardless of how good or beta it is as an option. Did I just say beta? Better. You can tell I've been rambling for a while. And it's interesting again, considering that, like, I didn't mind Safi all that much in terms of this. Like, I honestly played around with Safi and those weapons with the rolling and tried making some sets of my own, especially in terms of a punish draw, crit draw, great sword with Safi, and using pieces of that all together. Made a new version when Frostvein Barioth came out, and I didn't really mind that system. So it's going to be interesting if the Gogma Arshian weapons fall into that same camp where I don't mind it, or if it's a tipping over point, if it's going to be a little too much for my taste, how it looks and compares to everything else. I'm hoping Gogmazios' weapons, his regular weapons and armor, are good regardless. I don't know. Like, that's just the most I can say. And I don't think I should talk about it any further because, again, I am not a meta-obsessive person. I am not the person to go to in terms of crunching numbers, saying what is statistically the best. Like, I am not that kind of person. That is not for me. If you're going into this video trying to expect that content, I'm sorry, you're going to be disappointed. I'm just not that kind of person. You should go to other videos that talk about the numbers and everything else about that. I'm, again, just a way more positive, feels good inclined person, and I prefer to wait and seek judgments when things come out, when we can understand the full scope of it. Because I think there is value in waiting off on the opinions, because if we rush to an idea, if we rush to an opinion early, before we get a full scope of it, that does impact the perception of a game or thing. I mean, fuck. Unrelated, it's still fucking crazy seeing videos about Pokemon Legends ZA come out, and people still using the critique of Lumio City being one entire model, when in reality, it's been confirmed that that is debunked, and it's been known for months at this point that that whole post was false. The person even took it down, and yet people are still spraying that around as the truth. Like, it's fucking ridiculous, and that's why I say again that we should wait a little bit. With all that being said, yeah, that's it for me in terms of this ramble. Holy shit, this has been 2 hours long in terms of recording. I don't know how I'm going to cut this up in the future. I don't know how much I'm going to keep of this recording into the actual video. It may very well be still close to 2 hours when I'm all done with it, but point is, that has been all for the video and me catching up on the latest going-ons in terms of the Monster Hunter community, or at least everything that I cared about and wanted to give an impression of. I thank you, everyone, who stuck through with me on this video, this long-ass ramble video, whether you were actively watching, or you had this in the background as you were going about your day. I deeply appreciate it, and I would be curious to know what you guys think down in the comment section below for any of these problems or things I discussed in the video. Whether it be positive, negative, or neutral. Just as always, please remain respectful and civil in the comment section down below, whether to me or to other people. If I see anything that goes against my guidelines or an impression of someone not being the greatest, then I will not hesitate to remove your comment from the comment section. Just saying. And as always, links are in the description down below for my Twitch, Bluesky, as well as Discord server. Join and follow any of these links to stay up to date on content I am making, on miscellaneous posts and stuff I repost, or stuff like the Discord where you can chat with people there, have fun, posting memes, being stupid, deranged idiots, affectionate. Stay up to date on content I am making, announcements, live streams, videos, all that and more. We've got channels for Monster Hunter, fighting games, Gachas if you're into that, Soulsborne, all that and more, even non-game stuff like kaijus and anime. That has been all for this video. I have been the Monarch of Dragons, and I hope you all have a fantastic day / night wherever you live. Peace and Klusvolts.